Hello, we are once again out and about relatively early. Have to make a restroom stop at Union Station, but we are out of Fort Totten because it's international break, so there's no arbitrary time pressure to do something. I'm on a mini fast for for 16 hours. I fast for 8 hours at a time, inadvertently. It was nice to look in the mirror. It was nice. But anyways, yeah, so 4 ton, right. So probably, we'll see how far we get down. Maybe I'll call it at a green line, maybe I'll walk all the way to Depot. We'll see. But yeah, material stuff market, I am cooked. The nice thing is because it is illiquid, the P&L doesn't benefit my P&L until it closes. But now that it is closed, because it's been a week since it's come out, right? So I'm kind of cooked, is what I'm saying. I guess the goal today is, I do a lot of complaining about stuff. Because again, if you're walking around, it's not loser behavior, right? But the goal today was be marginally more upbeat about things. About, what would like a platonic ideal be? But since the poster markets that come up, is it immature? Right, because naturally, especially in more illiquid markets, the market price, quote unquote, that your valuations are set at can vary from what it actually should be. So say I own contracts for Citigroup to not launch a stablecoin in 2025. Because fun fact, I assigned my handy assistant ChatGPT to look at if the Genius Act can pass. And apparently, if it's correct, like literally, nothing can happen in 2025 because of the legislation's timing. It takes like 120 days for it to be accredited. So it seems like free money, buying no on Citi and B of A to launch a stablecoin in 2025. Frankly, it is free money. The contract's trading around 90 cents to buy no. So 10 cents. They're selling dollars for 90 cents. Frankly, I should be much bigger in it. Because in terms of, literally the legislation is legislation. So if anything, it should be money good. Right. It should be that. But clearly, let me go gamble on TSA futures. But anyway, so there's stablecoin markets, the pricing can be off. So it shows up as a loss, even though it shouldn't. So is it immature if I buy the market, 2 shares in a market, just to reset the current market price to inflate my mark? Is that immature? That's probably how some horrible financial calamity happens. The other guy's having the genius idea to treat financial marks that way. Not suggestions. I think that's completely fair and not suspect in the slightest. But genuinely, I do have conviction that what else Trump not to go in 60 minutes? Why would Trump need to go in 60 minutes when he has Trump True Social? It is also hilarious how Ludnick literally yeah. So of course with the rare earths thing, but China was on its national holiday week, so the reaction was delayed. But when the U.S. released its, like, the Wall Street Journal's not reporting the same, of course, but the U.S. and Ludnick released the 50% rule on exports and certain, like, semi stuff, and that, right, is a violation of the agreement set up in Spain/Madrid. So that is why we have this nasty looking conundrum. But I suppose it's nice for Ludnick, to give more dip buying opportunities. Somebody has to. But yeah, that's how it goes. But yeah, anyways, so maybe we'll go back to complaining about stocks later on. But any other big things I want to document for posterity? Any funny stories, news-wise? Nah. Anyways. So again, the common thing that I keep on stealing from Ganesh is... or just the other point is just, like, what is the platonic ideal? I'm not sure if living in DC is the platonic ideal. It's not a terrible ideal. I mean, I do imagine New York City, especially, again, like New York City, if you have money, it's probably peak existence. You could probably toss in Milan, right? FT had a puff piece about Milan as a rich expat destination a couple weeks ago. Shanghai is probably up there. Yeah, it's like, what is a top expat city in each continent? And if you had to pick one, then I think New York City definitely wins North America. I don't think that'd be overly debatable. Per se. That's North America, right? Because like it's presumably none of the Central American countries are really gonna win that. Well, I don't think El Salvador is really gonna take that. Mexico City, probably not. Any Canadians? Toronto, Vancouver? I don't know. I'm not sure Toronto urbanism is, well, A, if you would call it urbanism, but B, if it really counts. Probably not. Probably. And then that leaves you with the US. And it is like New York, LA, DC, Boston, Philly. No way you would consider Dallas or something like that as a peak US city. Correct me if I'm wrong. in, in Dallas, but probably not. Austin. I think when we walked by Jerome Powell's house the other time, there's a concept of if you had to pick the 100 most poor Americans or the richest 100 Americans, where or how would they be distributed across the U.S.? And how we fairly confidently would say, I don't really think any of them would be in Mississippi. I can imagine one of them having some estate in Georgia, and that's the claim to fame. I can imagine that, but I don't think Mississippi per se. Maybe, not Alabama. Right, it's like, and that's probably a good way to think of what like your ideal city would be if you're loaded, right? It's like, well, New York probably, like a nice Brooklyn townhouse row home setup, or Upper East Side. It's not a bad life, I imagine. Not at all. South America, a bit tougher. Some of the Brazilian, Rio, Sao Paulo. Someone on Red Scare Pod had the. I was as a quick side note. I listened to a clip of Red Scare Pod. I never actually listened to the podcast, but I will reference it, which is probably a dangerous thing to do. But I listened to a clip of it, and I generally, their vocal, like Dasha and Anna's tone and vocal fry, genuinely, I knew it was a topic of a humor by critiquing it, but I didn't realize the vocal fry was like that to such a degree. Man, what toll did I know? Yeah, genuinely tough vocal fry. Okay, Brazil, Sao Paulo. But it is supposed to be Sao Paulo, where it's actually quite a big city. Yet not that. Yet not that. You don't hear about it much. The same way you don't really hear about Indonesia these days. At all. Or Angola. Or Nigeria, right? The joke about Nigeria, of course, is that all of the population statistics are fake, right? Just because of resource allocation by having more people reported. But conversely, you've probably got the argument that in a very low development country where you can't or don't have any like census infrastructure, you could probably undercount. But does India count North Sentinel Island? Maybe. That would be kind of funny. Although, actually, it is a great bit because conceptually, because I'm fairly certain India, like the Navy has to do stuff, or like they have something that watches over the island to make sure people don't go on it. But it's not as though North Sentinel is paying tax revenues. And if they're not paying tax revenues, it's literally a material net negative, right? So, if the discourse in the US is paying health insurance for illegal immigrants, for illegal aliens, that is such a, man, that's such a, it's a very intentional choice of words. So, like I said, it's basic rhetoric, but if a fun thing to do is just, again, right, true, like the real privilege, or privilege is ultimately not having to care about something. I just was as a general bystander, you can just observe the type of language used by certain parties. And when you hear people use illegal aliens, like, that is very bluntly a clear rhetorical choice. And clearly it does, it's an effective rhetorical choice, right? Like, aliens, you know, like different emotional context, less humanity, you know. And the best part is, like, dudes 200 years ago came up with this stuff, man. With those like anti-Irish or China immigration things. I just was a good point is nothing is ever new under the wheel. How did we get sidetracked on that? Oh yes, the welfare, the Indian welfare state for North Sentinel Island. That would be funny if it actually was a talking point. Yeah, pretty marginal and probably ultimately it's more of a training exercise thing than anything else, but a bit amusing. Underappreciated part of DC is the big resi areas. Yeah, Patagonia, South America, presumably, well, you have a couple options. And frankly, it is a fun question of, are the top cities rich people should want to live in? Are they the same as pretty much just big tourist cities? And if you use tourist cities as a framing mechanism, then think about South America. Well, Colombia, right? Bogota, Medellin, Argentina, Buenos Aires, noticeable pause. Brazil, Sao Paulo, Rio, Porto Alegre, Bahia, Peru. I mean, Chile, honestly, Chile is probably underrated. Of course, Santiago is the main city. But, right, so frankly, Chile with, well, I'm not sure if you call it, I just suppose it's not necessarily pristine beaches all the way down. But maybe. Africa. Gosh, what's that big city? It's in Nigeria. It's a big, I forget the name of it. Accra. It's a big city that gets an occasional article about being trendy. But I'm blanking on the name. Got some Moroccan ones, right? But yeah, it's like if you had to stack rank your continents of trendiness and desirability, probably not any. Well, like you have some of the North African countries, South Africa, I get right, in these countries, naturally there's enclaves, but not really the common life, quote unquote. I don't want to go through this exercise. It is a nice filler speech, but there was a good tweet where the guy's point was, it tells you how fake these finance guys are, because conceptually, what you could do if you really valued autonomy and being your own man and not being stuck working for some crappy PM, is you could just grind really hard, save, have a couple million, and then run with that, and you're good. And the fact that you don't hear about that so often, of course there's some selection bias, right? Because if you win the game, then you'll self-select out of the discourse. But stuff really happens. Well, the fact that there are so many experienced analysts or PMs running around kind of shows how that's not the baseline. And so whether it's lifestyle creep, or New York City marginal tax rate, or whatever, it's a bit humbling. But I do suppose that it's the big message of life, and hopefully these ramblings is that I do suppose that is a big point to life, is just humility. Although when would be your peak pride, right? Cometh the hour, cometh the man. The pride comes before the fall. Curious. I do suppose peak pride varies from person to person. For men versus women, it probably do. Like, you probably segment it, right? Men versus women, education level, right? Because if you have a college education and you're a member of the PMC, your peak is going to be different than the high school guy, right? Because of course, right, naturally the guy who works for that high school, it's something like the initial earning spike versus the long-term trajectory. So this was maybe a peak then. Your physical peak, your physical ability undoubtedly plays a big role. And your self-judgment of peak. The day I can't wake up at 5:30 to do these on a Saturday after waking up at 6:20 on weekdays, that's the day I know I've aged up a bit too much. And I will look back upon these videos fondly for what I have been capable of. I will say, in DC, some strangely elaborate Halloween setups. Sort of beats the alternative. But genuinely, in Philadelphia, I don't think there was nearly as much. And I generally doubt that New York City would as well. The true secular holiday, but yeah. Back on the finance thing, right? The only guy who probably has broken out of it, who has a tangible online presence. And again, right, you probably lose the online presence at a point, is Clouseau, right? Good old blondes of money. Gotta love his tweets about Bloomberg sales reps, you know? It is funny conceptually, right? If you think about the business of selling something, right? Nobody likes being sold to. So if the other person's good looking, that probably helps. And it belongs money's whole bit, or at least part of his bit, to help them get bigger on FinTwit. Where it's like all the Bloomberg sales reps are cute girls. Or we could probably argue that a lot of like professional services, customer roles, where you visit in person and stuff, tend to be cute girls likely, right? Yeah, conceptually, but that just is what it is, right? And the same goes for good-looking guys, but you can kind of see if you're a richer guy, you can kind of see how it works out negatively. Where your feedback loop, right? Because essentially, like, their job is kind of to schmooze you, to like laugh at your jokes or to say good question or good point. And so at a point, like say you're like a billionaire and you have some managed wealth function at a big bank, right? Like the client sales folk are gonna charm you, right? It's like presumably, and like at your whatever company or firm, whatever, right? You're probably gonna be, right? So essentially, you're just gonna have a perpetual feedback loop, or a feedback loop where you only interact with people of that certain X percent of the distribution of attractiveness, right? Attractiveness, I don't want to say it's correlated to professional outcomes, but it certainly doesn't hurt you. And you see the stats about, like, if someone's better looking, you're more likely to give them benefit of the doubt. Or the number of CEOs who are about 6 foot or whatever, right? It's like, you know, if deontological determinism is what happens, as Bill Ackman aptly pointed out, or amusingly pointed out, right? That's your name kind of affects what you end up doing. Again, the determinism part, there, to some degree, there is an attractiveness determinism, but who is to say? Okay. Now the hunger is kicking in. Yeah. But nevertheless, you know, you gotta do your part. Gotta try. But now, so honestly, like, if you have an independent balance sheet that's reasonably healthy, and you enjoy it, then you've got a global mandate. You can do whatever you want. You can short, you can go long. And that's a platonic ideal, right? You want to go short some BDCs? Let's go do it. Let's find the ones with insane pick. Okay, conceptually, all you have to do if you want to buy BDCs, find those below book, and find those where the earnings and the actual cash earnings are sufficient. So, if like the price of book, like, it's the last thing you should look at. What you should do, you should look at the cash distributions, the payout, and compare that to the earnings, and see how much, and like total earnings versus pick earnings. Right? And you can make the adjustment for pick, and then that's like the real earnings it can do. And once you know the real earnings it can do, and you know, like, there probably is some crap hidden in these private credit things, right? Then that's where the price of book comes in, where you're protected. Like, that's kind of all you need to do. Now, this first brand stuff, that is actually pretty. It is strange. Like with the GFC, it felt this way. Where like you hear about some big issue, like, right, imagine you could say something about an internal hedge fund having challenges, and the same with Jeffries and Lucadia. But the actual medium, again, if a broader theme that I like to keep bringing up is the medium, right? Like here we are walking through the built environment, right? The built environment is a medium for how the people of this neighborhood in Petworth exist, right? If that's the theme of this show, this little vlog playlist, then then the medium in which you hear financial news matters too. It's like, well, the GFC, like the Twitter wasn't really, it was around, but not big in GFC, right? But there's a difference between seeing a market moving Trump tweet on Twitter versus reading about some contagion event in Bloomberg or in a news article on your phone, right? There probably is actually an interesting study somewhere to analyze like the emotional difference in reaction depending on the medium. Could have. Like I suspect that because it's Twitter, right? And it's just so much smaller of a screen. And like if it's smaller, it compels you to action. Right. And therefore it exacerbates the mental jitters. I just suppose if you want to measure that, you need to measure like volatility. And that's not fair, just given more market participants, bigger markets, more leverage. So, I don't know. Who needs a proper controlled study when you can just sling around facts and statements willy-nilly like I do? On the vlog, not professionally. Yeah, that's how I would. That is a project I should do at some point. I probably should see how my BDCs are they egregiously picking or not. It is an exercise where you can just lean on the price a bit. Well, if PSEC is down 70%, the market's kind of telling you that it's kind of crap, ain't it? Right. And I'll take my market signal when appropriate. Because who am I to say against Mr. Market? Or it is funny to try to buy the dip in a BDC. It's like price to book is backward looking. And I do over-index on price to book. And I don't know, it's a very easy way to frame, are you diving into the bell? Are you one more time into the fray? It's like, well, I was trading at half book. Yeah. Half book's not great. Because that kind of means, right, the market's in pricing that, assuming the assets are good, or valued, that the company is worth more selling, it's like liquidating and not existing than existing. I don't know. If I was dating a girl and she said that would kind of hurt my feelings, that I would be worth more to her having sold my kidneys to an organ harvester than my charming, witty personality and my physical existence and presence. I don't know, that messed me up, just being honest. If I was a public CEO. But then again, if you're a public CEO, you probably got a couple million reasons to not give a crap. To which I say, respect. My phone battery is dying extremely aggressively quickly. So I might have to cut this short, which is a shame, because I have not walked out to this part of the city. Last weekend I walked past Brooklyn and I went all the way down to Echo Stage past the crappy industrial part, which is different. And you go from the crappy industrial to Union Market. It's like there's a contrast. Very charming contrast. Yeah, but generally my phone battery, right? Woke up at 5:30. It's now at 30%. Guess there's an issue to charge. And I am not raw dogging a full subway ride without my phone. So we have to cut it there, which is a shame. We could have done a lot more. And I was just getting on a good roll right there. Talking about private credit, talking about BDCs, that's what gets me. A man's got to live for something. And it may as well be BDCs. And that got no guy any positive reaction from the opposite gender in history. Now, in terms of when you first could have said a sentence like that, I am hyped about BDCs. Like, you probably only could have made that sentence past one where BDCs created by Congress in the act not too long ago, like 30 years maybe, 40 max. I'm willing to bet, you know. So, but again, the built environment, right? Very different from where we were just at. You know, just got to notice things. But anyways, we just gonna roll on BDCs. But again, my phone battery's genuinely gonna die. So I suppose my fast one earlier today, but cheers. Again, if you have BDCs, let me know your favorites. I'm a big 6th Street guy. Because we should do a quick face check. Hers is a bit messy, less messy than usual. Because it's so cold, then I do like making my hair wet. You can just let the cool air freeze your hair effectively. It's like, bro, styling hair is so easy. But yeah.